and industry, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa. It's been a while. He's joining us on the show via Zoom to break this down. Thank you so much, Mr. Idahosa. Good afternoon. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you, Tolu. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I think I'm sure you've seen that report from the IMF and understanding the details of it. First is the fact that there's a bit of commendation talking about our policies in that write-up. That is one. But on the other side, they are also trying to identify what needs to be done by government, addressing fragility of the economy, boosting food security. But first, let me get your understanding of this latest report, just released yesterday from the IMF. How does it come to you and the members of the business community?
Well, no surprises, because we're here on ground. What the highlights of the report are familiar with what, whether it is a slightly elevated growth prospects, whether it's a fragility or certain aspects of the economy. Essentially, the report is saying it as it is, and so that should be commended. That sometimes they don't reflect what it really is. But in this case, the report essentially is saying what is on ground for the international community, mirroring what we are going through right now. Once the reform started at the beginning of this administration, it was clear that it was going to go through rough weather in getting the economy to adjust. And so that fragility is primarily driven by that. It's also driven by enduring issues like security in many parts of Nigeria, which have heavily impacted economic activity generally on the downside. So it's familiar story to us in Nigeria.
Interesting start, but like I alluded to, positives on the part of the reforms. The fallout of the reforms, they are also trying to advise, or try to advise government here actually on what to be done to address this. One is improving the social safety net, and of course how to address challenges faced by the vulnerable ones. How well would you say government has fared in that aspect?
Well, that is the biggest challenge for government today. When you just look at facts, that we have maybe 200 million people, and clearly over 100 million of that are living at the very, very base poverty line, even below the poverty line. These are people that cannot afford 1 meal a day. Then certainly it is difficult to talk about poverty line for such people. So that is the biggest challenge. The reforms are addressed in major macroeconomic, the big drivers, conversion of foreign currency exchange rates, removal of subsidy, attracting foreign investments on the basis of a more predictable economy, lower volatility in the exchange rates. All those big figures, big numbers are in place, and the government is rightly commended for that. But the primary effect of that is a significant drop in the buying power of Nigerians. Whatever they were earning 2 years ago cannot buy up to 30 or 40% of what that same amount bought 2 years ago. So yes, the biggest challenge for government is how to address that massive poverty base, and any efforts to mitigate the situation of those people is what that part of the report is talking about. We did not have a worse, well-established social safety net by way of employment benefits or social security facilities for people at the very, very low or zero income level before the reforms were introduced. So the challenge before the government now is to introduce those reforms at a scale and a speed that is high enough to reduce the very, very significant, massive poverty that we see that's impacting on more than 50% of the Nigerian population.
Now, Mr. Dausa, you would agree with me that also in the first paragraph of this report, IMF is talking about reviewing the 2025 budget to avert, according to them, deepening financial crisis. Now, we've seen the assumptions of this document: projections for oil production, projections for crude sales per barrel, and what we see, the reality on ground. Don't forget the issues with the Middle East earlier and the impact of that we saw it clearly on the price of crude and, of course, impacted on the price of PMS in this part of the world. Now that government is saying, IMF is saying this, how easy is it to recalibrate our budget projections or reviewing the 2025 budget cycle?
Well, the government, the IMF is just giving advice by way of doing its job to advise, but the IMF itself, we Nigerians know that definitely there's very little room to maneuver in the budgets. As far as income projections are concerned, the revenue agencies, the Federal Inland Revenue, the customs, have stretched themselves very significantly to increase incomes. But the underlying conditions in the economy means that you cannot increase incomes very significantly. A lot of companies are declaring massive losses. Many companies are struggling. Economic activity in a good number of states have declined significantly because of insecurity. These are not matters that the government can fix in this 1 year. So to that extent, there's very little room for government to change in any dramatic manner the budget as it is now. Rather, it is struggling, continuing to struggle as was predicted, to achieve the revenue, the income revenue targets in that budget. Because at the beginning of the year, clearly the business community made the point that some of those income parameters were too high. The production, crude oil production per day, the exchange rates for the budget, again, it was said from the beginning, it remains the same, that not all of that was realistic to what is achievable. So clearly, the advice is just by way of putting on record what the things should be done. They know, as Nigerians, we know that those key budget targets will not be attained during this year.
Talking about fiscal responsibility now, managing our fiscal responsibility, being responsible with our fiscal side of spending and all of that. What do you make of the tax laws now impacting revenue generation? Obviously, much is not going to come from that in 2025 because implementation is going to start in 2026. So that is why IMF is saying we must diversify our revenue base. Now, President LCCI, if we are to diversify revenue base, what are the options?
Well, that is not a new thing. It's not as if Nigeria doesn't know whether the federal, state, local governments that do not know that we should diversify. The revenue base of Nigeria now is very significantly diversified. The domestic revenue from the oil industry is much reduced. Non-oil domestic revenue is much reduced, and more than 50% of Nigerian revenue now comes from services, a wide range of services, from financial services to the entertainment and creative industry, and several other areas, export of services, the fintech, technology industry is contributing significantly. The financial services core industry, banking, is contributing. So it is no more a discussion. It's a very significant concern that we need to diversify the economy. The economy is already significantly diversified. So there's nothing new in that aspect, we advise. The important thing is how fast we can scale each of those sectors that need to be scaled. We cannot scale agriculture now because of the insecurity around all our farmlands. And so the areas for scaling, technology, services, creative industry, those areas are scaling. We can see a lot of increase in activity and revenues flowing from those sources. So really nothing new in that advice. And again, the federal government is constrained in making any significant progress in those areas, particularly around agriculture, small SME businesses in all the states, perhaps more than 20 states in the country where security is still clearly having a big impact on economic activity. So government needs to deal with the security. In fact, dealing with the security is the most important fiscal policy now in Nigeria. How do you make more and more states safe enough to do regular economic activity? There are many states in Nigeria that definitely are not fully engaged in the kind of regular economic activity that should enable employment, significant employment, and significant revenue for all segments, whether it's federal, state, and local governments. They have revenue sources that should increase significantly if we can improve the security in a very large number of our states. So that is the main, mandate that government needs to achieve. To address the security, there are significant solutions that have been suggested, but government has not put together the regulatory energy to implement some of those suggestions to address security.
But in the same report, let's delve to the other side of it now, talking about the central bank and what the Apex Bank has been doing. I don't know if you would agree that there's been some positives from that side, stability of the currency, stability of the, even today the Naira appreciated about 3.52 kobo, and many say it's because of the policies of the Apex Bank and what's happening from that space. That is one. And also discouraging the ways and means which actually put us in some form of issues, the other administration of the Apex Bank. What do you also make of these reforms with focus to the Apex Bank?
Really, the central bank has been significantly successful in addressing those key issues. If you look at where we were 2 years ago and now, the stability of the exchange rate we are seeing, the settlement of longer standing trade obligations across the board, the settlement of obligations to IMF itself, the attraction of significant FDIs, both announced and actually flowing into the business community. The general confidence, both within and outside Nigeria, that across Nigeria, through the central bank, is beginning to have its hand firmly on a stable currency environment. So we still have some volatility around the general 1,600 to the dollar rates, but generally, internally and the external community, as reflected by IMF, the central bank is commended for creating a regulatory environment with several policies, including a very transparent exchange for FX trading market now, where all participants can participate more or less on an anonymous basis, so you don't have kind of manipulations that we used to have in our FX market. So yes, the central bank deserves a lot of commendation. It has really helped the fiscal policy side of the country to sort of keep the monetary part stable and keep the ship sailing much more smoothly than we ever did in the perhaps many years prior to the commencement of the tenure of the current governor of the central bank.
For the business community now, what will you say is the major challenge moving forward? It's half year and we're on the other side of the second half of the year, and it's kicking off. We're in July already. So what are those challenges that you think need quick wins, you know, the short to the medium and long term, because the business community must be happy for them to be able to support economic growth and, of course, promote inclusive growth, which is what everyone is talking about. What are those immediate challenges?
Well, the primary challenge definitely is security, because you just can't do business where there's no security. So
True.
The business community is very anxious that government gathers what I just call the energy, the word political will list of log. But government must understand all the governors, all the House assemblies, all major politicians, all major stakeholders, traditional rulers. There's a consensus that we have to have what is labeled as state policing, but not really. That label does not tell the whole story. We must have policing at all levels. The federal police system, the state and all subnational systems. In a country as large as Nigeria, across the world, it is a combination of policing at those levels that make the country secure enough for the farmer in the most remote village, for the small business owner to go out every day and do their business, because they know as they are going about their business, they are seeing patrols, they are seeing police patrols on the ground. They are not waiting for fighter jets to protect them. They are seeing patrols on the ground, in the markets, in the shops. They see an effective police presence in the smallest localities. Even in the villages, as you move around, you see passing by. So you have a sense of confidence to go out and do your business. That is the major expectation from the business community. Give us a safe environment. When we talk of ease of doing business, an enabling business environment for business, the most important thing in Nigeria now is security. It's even more important than power, even though we are worried about power. But even if you have power and you know, the business person cannot move across 2 towns to deliver products or get raw materials and return to base safely. So what use is the power? So I will say that is the most important, if you like, quick win that the business community is looking at. For government to just put together the energy with which the fuel subsidy was removed, the energy with which the foreign currency was removed, to get the constitutional amendment to get multi-level policing so that there will be investment in security at all levels. The state government and stakeholders in the state, the business community in the state, very happily provide funds like we have in Lagos State, the Lagos State Security Fund. In every state in this country, the business community will do a lot of that if they know that that fund is direct to a state police or a metro police that is protecting connected urban areas. And we will see a very significant growth in the economy when that happens.
Brilliant stuff. One word on the FFRCN deals that has also been put on hold by the Ministry of Trade and Investment. I like your views on that.
Yes, it's put on hold for good reason. And expectation is that a final resolution of that bill that will enable the business community be happy in the sense that it's a regulation that is a win-win, that enables governments and the private sector to be happy. At this point, it's work in progress. We believe that a resolution, because at the end of the day, it is the business community that pays all the taxes, federal, states, local government. So if the government itself wants the businesses to survive and grow and pay taxes, the issues around that kind of bill is to be addressed, because dead companies don't pay taxes. That is just the reality of some of the conversations around some of these policies. Dead companies just are not there to pay taxes. And so if there are policies that are threatening the ease of thriving, of being successful, of growing your business, then it makes sense for government to do what is the right thing for both parties. So putting it on hold is a good step towards a final resolution that becomes a win-win for government and the private sector.
Mr. Gabriel Dausa, I must thank you so much for your time. President, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
All right, then now still